This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video.
Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Engines Chair. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. I know I got a lot of new subscribers from Boyd. Give me a shout out over on his channel, so hopefully I won't disappoint you or let you down. This is the first video for the Kronos 1. Haven't built this model before. Not too many people have built more than one because it just came out, I don't know, within the last month or two. And then been kind of putting it off, waiting for the lighting kit to come out, or not the lighting kit, but the photo etch set, which still has not come out. And here it is mid-September, it still hasn't come out. But I figured I'd go ahead and get a start on it because my sponsor Gary over at Mask Design is sending me a masking set, which he just put out this past weekend, and I should be getting that sometime this week, hopefully. But there is some stuff we got to do. There's some assembly and also some modifications that we have to do, which is interesting for a kit that you actually have to modify it to build it. So we're going to talk about that. There is some confusion in the instructions. I'm going to talk about I kind of flipped through them and looked through them, and there was a little bit that it's going to take a little bit of figuring out. So bear with me. Give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, so here it is, guys. We've got the lighting kit from Polar Lights for the Kronos 1, which has some really decent lighting. The only downside to this is that, from what I've read, is that the photon tubes are continuously lit versus being able to fire them. But I do want to use just a basic kit for stuff for this build, and just, so everybody can kind of see it. I know Lou did a side-by-side build, basically, of one Kronos 1 using the stock Polar Light stuff, and then another one using some upgraded stuff. I think he used a Tenna Controls board and the photo etch on the other, whereas on the other one he just used the stuff that came with. This comes with some photo etch. I think there's a little bit of photo etch in the kit, but for the most part all the adornments in that are decals with this kit, and you have to buy the photo etch separately. Now, as of this video, it's mid-September. They still haven't released the photo etch set yet for this, and Gary has just started sending out his masking set to do the Kronos 1. So, and I'm noticing, when I look at the box for this lighting kit, I notice that on the back side is actually looks like a Katinga, not the Kronos 1, which is interesting. But I'm sure you can use that. I think someone said it's the same lighting kit basically. This just has the added ability to light the nacelles. But we'll get a better look at that once we open this up. I know there's a little bit of glare on this. I haven't removed the plastic on these. I haven't even dug into these yet. So you're really going to get a look at this from the beginning with me. But we'll just open these up real quick. I'm not going to do I don't want to do a whole unboxing of this because there's plenty of unboxing videos out there. But what I do like to do is break these open. It's just going to sit over there for now. I like to break these open and take a look at them and kind of get what I've referred to before as kind of a plan of attack on these, a plan of assembly, if you will. And basically what I've got in mind right now, and I just need to make sure of how the lighting kit's going in this. I want to do sub-assemblies just like Gary did or has done in his painting videos. And that way it's easier to follow along with Gary's videos and paint this as he does it if I break it down into the same sub-assemblies. I just got to see how much wiring needs to be run. Come on. And if I haven't said so before, the box art on this, I know some people don't like it, but I think it's gorgeous box work. It's, you know, all this full color box work that we get on these now with all these instructions on here. And let's see, 56 individual photo etch brass pieces, provides authentic detailing. That's advertisement for the photo etch set. And then the Kronos 1 lighting kit. So let's set this box aside. And as you can see, we've got a lot of parts. And the great thing about this kit now, the Katinga kit, from what I hear, I haven't even opened it yet. I've got a Katinga kit. It's been sitting in my closet waiting to be assembled for, probably 2 or 3 years now. It's been sitting there. And I've just had other builds that I want to get into. But from what I hear, that one's molded in black as well. And it helps because we don't have to worry so much with the light blocking on it. But what I need on this really is to kind of dig into the instructions, which are going to be all the way at the bottom. Here's our little bit of photo etch that comes with the kit. And I saw these at Wonderfest, but I didn't really get a chance to see these with the kit yet. But these are the decals that are basically replaced by the aftermarket photo etch. Now I get the feeling a lot of people are going to be using the decals versus the photo etch. The photo etch right now, as priced, is like $100 just for the photo etch. So, you know, you're talking about, I forget what I paid for this, $130, $150, something like that for the kit. Another $100 if you want to get the photo etch. That's $250 plus the lighting kit, I think, is 60 or 70 bucks. So, you know, you're into this with no paint or anything for like $200 and at least $270, $280 just for the basic lighting kit. And you can get more expensive lighting kits. This lighting kit's actually pretty reasonably priced. I think, like I said, I think it's like 60 or 70 bucks, if that. So compared to some of the other lighting kits and the lighting kit for the TOS Enterprise is very affordable. Which I'm glad they did, because with everything else being so expensive, it's nice to have the lighting kit be a little more inexpensive, a little less expensive than what some of the other kits are. And the other great thing is too, is if you haven't looked at Gary's masking set already to paint this, he has really run the bottom line on that, so to say. He's only asking, I got to look again, I think it was like $45 for the masking kit plus shipping. But that's like one of the least expensive masking kits I've seen on the market for the Kronos 1. But in general, masking kits are usually pretty pricey, and that's pretty affordable masking kit. So if you haven't been over to Mass Design's Facebook page, the order and form links and that are always at the bottom of this video, so be sure to go there, click the order and form link, and take a look at it. And but it's very affordable, so I'm glad that he's done a really low price point on that masking set, because it makes this whole model in general is just really pricey if you want to do it upright, even with just the basic stuff from Polar Lights. So I've got the assembly guide here for the Kronos 1, and I'm just trying to see basically what sub-assemblies they are looking at here. So they've got you assembling the bulb and the spoon, so as to say, some people are referring to it as, which is good. That's how Gary has his assembled. And we are doing the back where the engine and shuttle bay are at separately. So again, It's just like Gary has his in the painting guide, and also the back section. So basically we've got, it looks like 3 main assembly, well, 4 or 5 depending on how many you count these. You've got the main body, we've got the neck and the head. So that's 2. We've got the warp engines, which is 3 if you don't count them individually. And then we've got the shuttle bay and engines back here. So not a whole lot of sub-assemblies, but it looks like we should be able to do that. That's pretty much what the kit's calling for. And I think you got to look at too, though, is in these lighting kits, they will typically come with their own set of instructions. And there they are at the bottom. And you got to look, again, more photo etch that comes with the lighting kit. So you do get a little bit of stuff. You got to look at the instructions for the lighting kit too, though, because sometimes some of the steps will get changed from the model instructions. So you got to make sure you look at those too, make sure that they're not calling for you to do a step differently. So let's take a quick look at those. And looks like we got, starting with, just goes over the wires. It doesn't look like this really gives a specific order of assembly. And I know this takes up all the camera, so you can't really see it. But it looks like we've got a wire that runs down the neck. So if we're going to do this and the neck and spoon section separately, I've got to make sure that once it's assembled that we can fit these wires down the neck, which I'm pretty sure we can. It's a pretty good amount of space in that neck. So as long as we can fish this length of wire down into the head here, because this is all closed over, even though it shows open here, this is going to be all closed over when we go to paint it. And it shows it again down here. Down the bottom here it shows it. We got one wire that runs from the back to the front up that neck. So we should be able to get that fished up through here to connect the wires after we assemble that. And you've got the wire that runs down into the nacelle. So that shouldn't be a problem to do separately. And then it looks like you've got a single wire that runs up into the shuttle bay there to run the lights for that. So it looks like we should be able to pretty much assemble this the way Gary had his assembled for painting. The only thing I've got to look at is, do we need to run these wires and have them sticking out already? It may be easier to do it that way. So and the wires aren't a problem. We can always mask those, wrap them in paper towel and tape them off, or however you want to do it. Put plastic bags over them, little sandwich baggies some people do, and they'll tape around it, and that way your bulbs, because I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure whether these bulbs are attached. It shows you down here, these bulbs are attached to the wire, or whether they connect somewhere. I'll have to look at those. Either way, we should be able to run this and keep it masked off to where it's not getting paint all over it. But yeah, it looks doable. It looks like we can do that. So my plan is to get these main sub-assemblies, the back part here, the neck and spoon, the engine bay, the shuttle bay, and then we can do the top part of the head separately and get that assembled, and the nacelles separately. So that is the plan, to get those assembled and probably run the lights through the main hull body here, and just kind of get those in place. That way, once I'm done painting, we can just hook everything together and do it that way. So that is my main plan going into this. Remember, plans can change because I haven't built one of these before. There's no telling what I may run into, but I'm glad to be doing this kind of just with the basic stuff, you know, other than, of course, some people may do this without the lighting kit, and that's fine. But I'm glad to do this with just kind of the basic polar light setup. But anyway, guys, that's just to give you kind of a breakdown of what I'm going into. So let me get to work getting some of these components set out, and I've got to get them washed. That's the first thing you want to do. Take all of these parts out of the box. Let me get this out of the way. You want to take all these parts out of the box. You don't necessarily have to do them all right off the bat. You can do them as you're getting ready to work with them, but definitely don't forget make sure you get some warm water. Don't use really hot scalding water, but just some warm water. I use Dawn dish detergent because it's real good at not leaving a residue behind. But make sure you wash these real good. Get any release agent that may be left on these parts. Man, these are really nice etched parts. I never looked at these in the Katinga kit before, and this is basically the same mold for that part anyway. So I'm really impressed with that. But so make sure you wash these real good, and then we are going to put a gray primer coat on this. And well, we'll get this assembled. The sub-assembly's done first. Put the gray primer coat on, and then we'll be ready to start following Gary's video. So give me a little bit to work on this, and if I've got anything else to add, I'll come back. And otherwise, when we come back, I'll have this pretty much together. But hang with me. All right, so just something I've mentioned in previous videos, but I'll do it in this video too. I haven't washed this, by the way. I decided there's a couple little modifications we need to make to this front part according to the directions. So according to the instructions, and I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. I'm at part 7 because I want to get this back piece together because that's what Gary starts with in his paint masks. So I want to get started with that. But so in part 7, in between part 7, well, kind of midway down part 7, it talks about there's some holes that you need to fill, which are basically windows, and there's some parts you need to remove. The two of them are these little kind of triangle pyramid type pieces on the front here. And what I want to mention was always, get a good pair of snips to remove parts with. They're not only good for removing parts from parts tree. For example, I'm going to need these parts here shortly. But instead of, some people will take these and they'll bend them back and forth and break, and what ends up happening is sometimes you end up breaking off a little chunk of the part itself instead of removing it cleanly. So what I like to do is just take a pair of snips and actually cut just a little bit away from the part that I'm trying to cut off. And the way these snips are shaped, they're shaped kind of like a wedge. So as long as I hold the one end against the part, it kind of works its way away from the part, and that way you cut it off cleanly. And then I can come back in if I want, once I've got this done, and my air conditioner just kicked in, so hopefully it's not too loud in the microphone, but I can come back and I can snip off a little bit of the excess. And once I get it down enough, I can just come in with sandpaper and sand the rest of this off. But try not to do too much of breaking these off, because you can damage the actual part that you need, and it's just not a good way to get the part off. And sometimes you can't help it. I've had parts where I go to cut it and it ends up breaking off the tree itself. And you can't really help it. You just got to do what you got to do. Sometimes, these parts take a little chunk out, and then you got to come in and do a little more putty work than what you would have had to do if you could have gotten the part off cleanly. So, but just a little thing I want to mention with that. And the snips are good too for, we've got these details we've got to remove. I already removed one here, but you can come in this little triangle here and just take your snips and just clip it right off, and it's going to take off about 90% of that raised area. There's also, let me double check. Yeah, we've also got to remove these two little pieces that stick out here. So I'm just going to snip those off. And the benefit to doing this is because there's detail here. It saves me from having to do it's just a little less sanding I got to do, and a little less chance that there is that I'm going to remove some of that detail that I don't want to remove. Let me see. I think we got something over on this side too that we got to remove. This bottom piece right here. They want us to remove this detail here. And the two triangles, that part, those two parts, I think that's all we got to remove. And then I'm going to have to come in and I'm going to have to fill these windows in. I'm going to wash this before I start filling in any windows though. But I just want to mention that, get a good pair of snips. I've had these for years now. They've got paint all over them because I left them sitting too close to the where I was painting at one time. But get a good pair of snips and use those to get your parts off the parts tree versus trying to just break them off and end up breaking something. You can see I already clipped off this piece and kind of came in and sanded a little bit. I might do a little more sanding, but I don't think we got to have that perfect. There's going to be too much concern. There's a piece that goes over this, so I just wanted that open for that piece to go in. But all right, so I'm gonna get this washed. I'm gonna wash both of these main hull sections so I can get to work on these, and then I'm gonna fill in those openings on the front that the instructions talk about. For filling in, I typically will use the Bondo glazing and spot putty. I've had this tube last. I've had this for probably 2 or 3 years too. A tube of this will last you a while. You should be able to get it at Walmart or any of your hardware stores will typically carry it. So I'll use that to fill in those holes, and then once I get that done, I'll do a little sanding, and then at that point, if I've got anything to show, then I'll come back. I'll come back as soon as I got something else to show. So stay tuned. All right, guys. So I just want to say that this kit, I can understand that Polar Lights didn't want to do a whole new mold, but there's a lot of work to do on here that you definitely want to have some experience. I wouldn't pick this up as your first kit to do. At least not in this version. Maybe the Katinga, but not this, because there's so much that filling and sanding and filing and stuff that you have to do to fill in these holes here, or these windows that aren't supposed. I got to do some more work over here. This section's being a real pain, and then I got to do some more work over here. These I'm not too worried about, because these are going to get covered with a depending on what you use, the photo etch or the decal. This area gets covered with that, so just sand it down smooth, fill it in as best you can, and I'm not too worried that it doesn't look perfect there, because it's going to get covered over. These grill lines here, I don't have a good way to do this, to fill these holes in and not have to at least try to re-etch these lines. I mean, you've got two here and then the hole here that you got to fill in. The best thing I could say is probably use some UV resin, which, by the way, I'd mentioned I was going to use Bondo to fill this in. You've got to, I wouldn't just fill in windows, open holes with Bondo, because for one thing, it takes a long time for a plug to dry, for Bondo to dry real good when you use it to fill a window, because it makes like this plug in there. I would recommend using either some epoxy, like an epoxy clay or something like that, that you can push into here. A lot of people use epoxy sculpt, which is a model specific epoxy, but you can also use you've got those steel sticks or whatever they are from the auto parts store that'll work as well. That's an epoxy. So I'll use something like that. In my case, I used my UV resin and backfilled these, and then did a little work on them, and then used the Bondo to fill it in a little bit more, and sanded it some more. And this is my first coat of primer on here. It's still a little wet, so I'm trying not to touch it too much, but I still got a little more work to do on this. I gotta let this primer dry, and then I'll sand it some more, put some more filler in if I have to, which I'm probably gonna need to. But your main goal is just to get those details removed and then fill in all the windows on the front. There's no windows on the front of the Kronos one on this section, so a lot of work to do on this section. And the top of that section, you also have slots, which again, this is first coat of primer. I've got to go back over this because I can still, I don't know if the camera will pick them up, but I can still make out. But you've got these 4 slots, 2 on each side, that you've got to fill in. And I can still make these out a little bit, so I'm going to have to do a little more work on those. But that's the thing. You do some work on it, put a little primer on it, and it tells you, where you're at with that. And obviously I got to do a little bit more to that, so working on that still. And then on the bottom of this spoon section, you've got to it looks like in the instructions they want you to remove, let me focus this in a little bit, and I don't even know if I can, there we go, I can get the light right. you've got these two sections here. The instructions want you to remove this piece here, not the whole part, but where you've got this where it widens out here, and then you've got like a pipe coming out the front between this section here. They want you to remove that. And that's because I think there's a decal or a photo etch, depending on what you're using, that replaces, that goes in this spot here. I mean, I don't know if you have to remove it, because honestly this whole section here, when you look at the studio model, is a bit different anyway, and I'm sure some of it was done differently, because when they do molding, the molds on this, you can't do but so much as far as undercuts and that. So it's way different from what the studio model shows. I don't know if the photo etch is going to correct that or not. You've got these flat sections here, which I don't see anything in the instructions for. I don't know if there's photo etch for it, or if there's a decal in this case. I haven't seen anything, but there's a detail here where they've got this flat area that's missing. So we'll have to see when we get to that part if there is. I've looked for it in the instructions. I didn't see anything in the instructions that stood out. And then on the back of this, we've got to remove this whole piece here where this recessed line is, all the way across here. This section, this thing here has to come off, because you've got a piece of photo etch, or again a decal, that's going to replace that. That takes up this whole section. So that has to be removed and sanded smooth. And then these two pieces here may have to be removed and sanded. But again, I don't know if you really have to do that to get the photo etch in there, but I'll take a look at it when we get to that part. But that's another piece of work that's got to be done. And one other thing I want to say that I ran into was on this back part. You've got this cowling, I guess you could say, on the back here, but you've got to remove this piece in the middle. When you remove this one here, I highly recommend you use your hobby knife and not the snips, because when I did this first one, I noticed that the snips, when I went to cut into it, were pressing against these really thin slats here, and almost looked like it was going to break it. So I stopped using it at that point and just used my hobby knife to cut this part here. And this one I've already cut right through here. And then I can use my snips on the other side, because it's not as thin on this side as it is. That part right in the middle here is really thin. So just be careful when you do that. Use your hobby knife, I would say, to cut the inner part, and then you can come back with your hobby knife and trim it if you need to, and trim it out. And then if you've got a set of files, you can use your files to come in here and just take down any burrs you got left on any of these edges where you took the that piece off. So just wanted to point that out. Be careful when you do that, because these slats are not very thick. They seem to have a little bit of bend to them, so fortunately it didn't break on me, but it looked like it was pretty close to it. So I'm working on the back section and looking at the lighting. I noticed that in the instructions that they have notes in here as far as if you're using the lighting kit, which is good to have. And then you can reference back to the lighting kit specific instructions as far as how to do the lights. But so I'm going to continue to work on this, and then I'll come back and show you anything else that comes up. All right, guys. So I've run into a bit of confusion here on this this step 6 on this kit. I was working on this back part because I need this to get the main hull assembled, so I can do the lighting and get that sealed up, so I can start working on the paint masks when they arrive. Here's the issue I've run into. So on the sheet, this calls for using clear parts 130 and 129, which is fine. That's great. Those are part of the new parts that are added to the old parts tree. I think these are all the old parts, and this is the added parts for the Kronos 1. So these are fine, but it then mentions down here, if you're using the Polar Lights lighting kit, substitute clear red parts for parts 107, 108, and 113. Well, here's the problem with that. This is the tree. This is part 107 and 108. The issue is, know if I can find the one that I had laying out. The issue is that these parts don't fit the Katinga, the Kronos 1 engines. They just don't fit. They're too small. When you try to put them in there, you see, see if I can, you see that gap around it. It's not big enough. So Polar Lights basically took the same clear parts for the Katinga and gave them to you for the Kronos 1, but the problem is, what I suspected was that, I suspected that's what they did, so I went and pulled out my Katinga, which I haven't built yet. Oh, there's the part. That's why I couldn't find it, because I stuck it in there. And you can see that clear red part fits it fine on the Katinga because the engine shroud is smaller. But they didn't resize these for the Kronos 1. So there's no way to make these parts work. I mean, I can, but what I'm going to have to do to make these work is install them on this side, get them in place and glue them in place, and still have to use parts 130 and 129, which is fine. But the thing is, on these instructions, it doesn't even tell you where parts 107 and 108 go. 113 in the Katinga instructions is the torpedo launcher clear piece, so that's fine. It does mention that, but this is basically a carryover from the instructions for the Katinga. These parts 107 and 108 don't fit the Kronos 1. And see, 107 and 108 are the original clear parts that went into that shroud. So it took me, I had to go pull out my Katinga kit and break the plastic on it just to figure this out. And I'm a little irate about it because, you know, Polar Lights sold this kit and didn't even bother changing the parts. Now, hopefully everything else fits with it, but they didn't make this part, this 107 and 108, bigger to fit the Kronos 1 larger engine shroud. So I'm going to have to, like I said, I'm probably going to have to, if I want to use these parts, I'm going to have to install them in here, kind of like that. I mean, I can fit them down in there. I haven't trimmed them yet, but I'm going to have to install them on this side and then still use, well, I'm supposed to use, you're supposed to use the other parts anyway, the other clear parts. Get stuff falling over. These two parts here. So that's just one issue I ran into with this kit so far that gave me a little bit of confusion. These parts don't fit. So I'm going to have to, like I said, I'm going to have to put these on the inside here and fix them that way. That's the only way I can see to do that. So anyway, just thought I'd bring that up in case anybody else was running into the same issue where they're trying to figure out what in the heck these directions are talking about. Well, the directions don't know what the hell they're talking about apparently, because they use the same instructions that they had for the Katinga, but they didn't change the part to where it would actually work with the larger shrouds. So anyway, just figured I'd put that out there. Let me get back into this and see what I can come up with. All right, guys, here's what I've got, and it's all kind of temporarily stuck in place just to test it out. But so I'm not too happy with the way the engines look. In camera, they might look all right. I'm not too sure. Camera's showing about what I see, which it's not very red. It's more washed out. The torpedo launcher comes out very red, and you can see I've done some light blocking to help emphasize those circles around the larger circle, but just not too happy with the way these are looking, and that is with these red parts kind of stuck in the back here like I said I was going to try. So I think what I'm going to try next, let's see how I turn this off, is I think I'm going to, part of the issue is that these are clear bulbs. But I don't really want to mess with that. So I think what I'm going to do is paint the back of these lenses clear red. And that should bring the red back. And then I'll use these inner red lenses, or I might even swap them out for the clear lenses. Basically, all I'm going to use these for is diffusion. So I'm just going to sand the inside of these lightly to get a little more diffusion out of it. out of them, and then I think I'm going to paint these red, these lenses red on the inside to help with that lack of redness coming with the stock kit parts. So just wanted to go over that. That's with what I'm going to work on there. But before I can do any of that, I've got to get these parts. Well, first I've got to wash them and I've got to prime them. Right now I've just basically been fiddling with them to try to figure out how I want to work this back end here. So I am going to go and wash these and prime these, and we'll come back and take a look at it. Alright, so here we go again. So I think that looks a lot better in terms of diffusion and the color. A lot better than it looked before. So just to show you what I did here. I used that inner red part. I put that red part on the inside here, and I sanded it a bit to get a little bit of diffusion out of it. You can see how it's dull from where I sanded that. May do a little more sanding to it, but I think it works pretty well as it is now. And what I did was I painted the inside of these lenses with my I actually have some Model Masters transparent red still, so I use that, but you can use any transparent red. And then I used some smoke and smoked the lenses on the outside so they're darker. I didn't want them to be like a bright red when the model's sitting unlit. So I smoked them a little bit and darkened them up a little bit, and I think they look really nice like that. So I think that's my solution for this, and that will work. But let me, I gotta get these parts. I didn't glue any of these in yet because I've got to get all of this stuff painted yet. All this stuff's got to get primed, and unfortunately I'm gonna have to assemble this after it's painted. So I'm hoping that there's not a lot of issues with seam work. It didn't look like it. It looked like the seam should be pretty well sealed up, with just making sure that they're securely held together while it's glued. And once that glue sets, excuse me, there shouldn't be any concerns with seams. I did glue these two pieces in place already, these two bottom parts, and those are already glued in place, so that way I didn't have to worry about it later. I don't know why my white balance seems to be changing on me, but so I've got those glued in place, and then I'll get these primed up first, and then I'll get the lenses put in place. And I think there's some detail I've got to paint here. I know that Gary's masks have a mask to cover these once you finish painting them, and that way the lens is protected. So no problem with putting this together and then doing all the painting we have to do afterward. But give me a little bit to work on that, and we'll come back and take a look. All right, guys, so I got that modification made on the back end of this and removed that detail in line with this curvature here. So you can see that there's still a little bit of let me focus this a little bit. So you can see I removed that on the back there, so that way the photo etch or decal, whichever one you're using, I'll be using the decals for this, can just go right in place of that. But so I looked at my videos. It looks like I'm running a little long. I'm over half an hour already, but I've got those that other part, the main hull, the second coat done. I've got to do a little more work still to the front as far as where those windows were removed. I got a couple little spots that I still want to go over again, so I got to let that dry for a bit before I can even touch it. And then once I get that straight, I'm going to let that cure for a couple days before I do anything else to it. Gary was going to send my mask out Monday, which was yesterday, so I should hopefully be getting those later this week and have that hole pretty much together, and then that way hopefully next week I can start on actually doing the masks and start painting that up and making it hopefully look nice. But that's pretty much going to do it for this episode, guys. I know this is not very deep into it yet, but it kind of threw me a curveball with all the modifications that have to be made to this kit just to even get started on it. So, now that we're past that part, we can start moving along once I get the masking set from Gary. And he's also sending over some other stuff that I'm waiting on. There's a paint sample, a paint swatch he's going to send me for that Grissom. As far as one of the paints I couldn't find. So when I get that in, I'm going to try to figure out a paint replacement for that, since I couldn't find the blue, escaping me what it was called, but it was a blue paint that I couldn't find the color match for, and I thought I had a color match, but I don't. But anyway, that's part of the Grissom build, so I won't get into that on here. But I'll be working on that. I'll also be continuing to work on the Enterprise A and getting that worked on and getting some progress made on that. But again, thank you everybody for watching these videos. Thank you for all the new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. And if you want to get the updates automatically, hit that little bell icon. And as soon as I put out a new video, which this will be my second one this week already, time flies. But if you get any use out of this video at all, and yeah, maybe you don't want to subscribe, maybe you don't like subscribing to people, just at least hit that like button down there. Let me know that you got some use out of this, or that you enjoyed some of the information that I provided in this, some of the unexpected issues I've run into. But anyway, as always, thank you to my sponsors, Cass over Lake Monster Details, Gus over G-Cows, and Gary over at Mask Design. Please pay them a visit. Their links for their websites and their Facebook pages are all in the notes below. So again, thank you again. Till next time, keep modeling.